We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast for Action Vision Team Coaching. Let's dive right in. And we're going through a series to help Paul, where Paul said that he was holding himself back. And so, first tip for people is take personal ownership like Paul did and understand this actually comes from the the white paper. This concept comes from the white paper of why I don't succeed. And so it's a pretty cool white paper from the white paper library. And so it goes down into, it's in phase 4. My biggest challenge is me. I am the solution. So if somebody else is the problem, then we're giving up control. And so we're just a victim. Like if we're giving up control, we're giving up responsibility if it's somebody else's issue. If we take ownership of stuff, then we're taking back control. And so when I was reviewing over this and thinking through this over the week from last week, I thought, it's interesting because it seems like Paul's what he thinks is holding him back. I wonder if it's the same thing that's holding us all back. Pretty interesting. So last week we talked about me blindness to my own faults. And so we went around the virtual room and asked people, what they thought, Paul's faults were. Paul, questions, thoughts that you have about last week's lesson?
No, not really.
So what do I think the first steps are? I had shared be honest and direct with people that you are struggling with being honest and direct. Why? And then do it. So you say, one of the points, so one of the things that I'm on an adventure on is I'm trying to, like, I've identified 6 things wrong with me that I'm trying to fix. And one of those is that I have blindness to my own faults. So I'm asking more people. So if you see any faults, like it was interesting on one of the guys I play pickleball with, I shared with him that I asked my wife and my kids and other people around me 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a husband or a father or a friend or whatever? And then I asked them, what do you like most about me? And what would be one thing I could do to improve? And he said, I'd never asked my wife that question. I said, really? He's been married over 20 years. And he said, yeah. I said, really? I said, why not? He says, because nothing I do is right. And she won't listen to me. And they're a lovely couple. I mean, I play with, both of them, lovely couple. He's a cool husband. She's a cool wife. But it's interesting, on people's perspectives. And so, I'd encourage you to ask your spouse 1 to 10, where am I at? Or friends or whatever. Um, and then tell them and then say, I'm trying to be more honest with people. One of the things that people have said is I'm not honest enough. So does anybody know the genius of doing that?
Not sure.
So when we change, like when I changed my personality from a driver analytic personality, when I changed my personality to an amiable, nobody, like I went from the upper right hand side, I thought way up here to way down here, I thought, but nobody complimented me. Nobody said, Mark, you're such a nice person. You're so kind. You're so this. Until 9 months later, and I had to go halfway around the world in Russia to get total strangers to say, Mark, when we look in your eyes, you're just the kindest, nicest person in the world. The people around us, every day that we're with them, they're building up perceptions of us where they think we're wrong, where they think we're off, where they think that we're making mistakes, where they think we're not kind or we're not this or that. And so if you've been, with somebody for a week, it's longer than a day, and then a year, and then decades. And um, so if I change, like with my wife, we've been married for 41 years. And so she has 41 years of memories. She has 41 years of memories. So if I change, she's not looking at just today, she's looking at the past 41 years. With coworkers, we have X amount of time. So if we don't tell people we're changing, um, they don't, they're probably not going to acknowledge the change. They may not even notice it. Now, in something like this is especially important if people are not used to, like I had another guy pickleball, and he said, "This is what I say to my wife." Most people would say it's not a kind thing that he said, but he's just being direct with her. He's like, "Listen, I'm going to be direct with her." This same gentleman, so this guy told it to a friend. He didn't tell the friend to go home and say it to his wife. He just said, "This is what I say." He went home and said the same thing to his wife, and man, did he get chewed out. And it's like, well, I didn't tell you to say what I said. So it's going to be hard for Paul to shift gears and be more honest with people. When Paul is more honest with people, are people going to like that or not like it?
Most people won't like it.
Most people won't like it. Very, 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 very few people will like it. So most people aren't going to like it. So when Paul succeeds, when Paul succeeds, um, in doing this, he's not going to get any encouragement. He's going to get beat up because people don't want him to be honest. So he's going to say, well, it's not working. This is when it goes back. When we change, and when we change, people often don't like the change. So in one of the books, You Are the Placebo, um, there's a really cool uh, there's a really cool quote in there, and I'll pull it up. And I think it's very, very profound. You're the placebo. It says, usually when people step into the river of change, that void between the old self and the new self is so uncomfortable that they immediately slip back into their old selves again. They unconsciously think, this doesn't feel right. I'm uncomfortable, or I don't feel so good. The moment they accept that thought or auto suggestion, becoming suggestible to their own thoughts, they will unconsciously make the same old choices again that will lead to the progression of the same habitual behaviors to create the same experience that automatically endorse the same emotions and feelings. And then they will say to themselves, this feels right. But what they really mean is this feels familiar. So growth is uncomfortable. It's painful. It's painful for the person who's growing. It's painful for the person who's growing around them. And so if Paul does that, what he's doing, he's taking other people's suggestion. And so you might say, well, is he blaming other people? No, he's just saying other people have suggested this. So he's following the suggestions of other people. So it's harder to attack Paul because Paul's listening to other people. Now, what's going to probably happen is people are not going to like Paul in the short term. They just won't, because they don't like what he's doing. That's going to make his life harder, like terrorist. I mean, sorry, that's what it's going to be. So in the short term, whatever that means, it's not going to go good for Paul when he's more honest with people. Now, if he educates people, if he trains people, if he tells people what he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing, that will more likely go ahead and help people to give him room to grow. Questions?
No.
So changing is hard work. Most people think they're hard workers. Maybe not as much as we think we are. All right. Any other questions on me, my blindness to my own faults? Any questions on that one? Okay. So today's is unnecessary interruptions from coworkers and customers. Well, let's go ahead and let's address the coworkers. If all the coworkers are trained and have internalized that every interruption costs 20 minutes of lost productivity. So me saying hi to somebody, that breaks their train of thought, that can cost 20 minutes of lost productivity. So when I interrupt, when I knock on the door, when I go ahead and text them, when I do this, so when we're interrupted, our productivity goes down. It's cool that Paul saw this, understood this. And when Paul says unnecessary interruptions, most interruptions people think are necessary. So what's one solution for coworkers?
Here's how I fixed my interruptions for John when I first started. I wrote if I couldn't figure something out, I wrote it down. Then it had to wait till the next morning at the meeting unless I absolutely had to get it done yet that day. But more than likely, I did not want to wait till the next morning. So I figured it out myself. I figured out, oh, I was able to figure it out myself. Now I go into meetings with very little to contribute because I figured out most times you can figure it out yourself. So yeah, that was a big thing, waiting to our daily meeting. But I feel like the problem has kind of been eliminated now in the office here. Well, it has been until we hire someone new where I need to train them in again.
So, and this here, what's Paul really saying about himself? What Paul's really saying about himself is he's working harder. The easy thing is to go into John, but he did the hard thing. Like rather than just get the answer from John, he wrote it down. Then he'd have to bring it in the next morning. But he didn't want to wait until the next morning. He wanted to solve right now. So what he did is he figured it out. So and so we need to train people in that. Every new team member needs to be trained in that. Now, if we have the Life GPS mobile app and we have the training in there, this particular or all 6 of these podcasts maybe should be in there. So everyone needs to do that. If everyone does that, it increases the productivity. Another way you can do it is you can say, well, we're going to, have answering questions from 11 to noon and from 3 to 4. So you can have time block. So if you get, 20 interruptions in an hour, it doesn't cost you 400 minutes of lost productivity because there's only 60 minutes to lose. So what you do, and that's where the customers come in, you train the customers to go ahead and say, listen, the best time to call me is from 11 to 12 and from 3 to 4 because that's when I'm scheduled to answer questions. Now, if it's a dire emergency, you can give me a call if you want them to give you a call. Now, what lazy people will think when I say that, and so what lazy people will think when I say that is they'll say, well, that won't work all the time. Nothing ever works all the time. You're not looking at working all the time. You're looking at working. Can you eliminate 10% or 20% or 30 or 40 or 50 or 80%? You're not looking at 100%. You don't want to be black and white. What I just realized in the last week or so is that people who are black and white don't learn. They just don't. It's almost like they can't. Why? Because they internalize things, and if you criticize something, for them to accept that one piece of criticism, if they're black and white thinking, then you're saying that their whole being they're a mistake, so they can't grow. So you're not looking at 100%. So the lazy person that says, well, I can't go out and work because there might be a tiger in the street. What? like what? And so that's what lazy people do. Lazy people are always coming up with why things won't work. Well, that won't work, and that won't work, and this won't work, and I've tried this and it doesn't work. They spend more time and energy coming up with what doesn't work than what does work. So you train the customer, and then you enforce that. And you don't go ahead and answer calls. You say, I'll call you back unless it's an emergency. And how many emergencies are there? So, questions on this?
If you want to schedule people to call between 12 and 1 or 11 and 12, how can you get them to call between 8 and 4 once?
Well, again, you give them options, right? You say, here, and it's not, they're like children. You think adults, you need to tell an adult once, you don't. It's just like people like you guys have, where you don't have customer days. People come and pound on the door. And if you let them in, they'll continue to do it. Same thing is true.
Mm-hmm.
See, what you're doing is, and the amiable and the analytic personality, maybe the expressive, they have a hard time with this. They're like, well, you're not being nice. Well, no, but I'm being kind. That's a great video. So when you allow your customers to go ahead and control you, you're hurting other customers.
Mm-hmm.
You're hurting other customers. Or you're hurting your spouse, the spouse of the business owner, or the kids of the business owner, or your spouse or your kids. You're paying a price for other people's lack of planning or lack of discipline. So I was just using 11 to 12 or 3 to 4. You could do it once a day. You could do it twice a day. So we want to service our clients, but we want to service all our clients, not just the clients that squeak. Great question. Other questions?
So what you're saying is we shouldn't be giving them alternative options to train them to call in at the proper times. For example, right now would be voicemail. Maybe eliminating that or reducing
No,
that
they
time.
can call in at voicemail. They can call it, like if they call you and they go, you just don't answer the phone. You just let it go into voicemail. So you're going to check. You can say, hey, I'm going to check my voicemail twice a day. This is so we can have productivity, so we can best service our clients and get the work done for you. So adults are just like kids. They're selfish. It's all about them. They're not interested in your other clients. They're not interested. All they are is interested in themselves. They're selfish. And 10% of your clients will give you 90% of your issues. Almost always. These are the clients that are the issues. We talked about that in the yearly. I don't know if you guys have put together a list of, if we could get rid of these, 10 clients, these are the top 10 clients we'd give away. What's fascinating is if you go ahead and bump the price up, increase it by 50, 100%, you double it, whatever it is, one of two things will happen, just like we went ahead and shared in the yearly meeting. One is they'll go somewhere else, but what you'll find is everything will float. Your profitability will go up because they're costing you, but you don't get a bill. You don't really understand how much the stress and the pressure on everybody is having on poor clients. Or it'll fix it because you bump it up 100%, they'll whine and moan and groan and everything else. But they will go ahead and realize often they'll get their act together because they know you're going to bump it up 100% again. And they know their problem. They know they have issues with people. Other questions or thoughts? We good? Okay. So next week, we'll talk about constant, small, urgent jobs to push back and not so urgent, larger jobs. And that's a great one. I mean, that's a prioritization. So that one's going to be a real good one. So what would I recommend is on this? Train all team members in 20 minutes for any 20 minutes of pause for any interruption. Train all clients in how to, in clients in best, frame it in a positive way. Frame it in a way that helps them. Train, so when I started working from my home office, and our youngest two were 3 and 5 sons, and they interrupted me. First 2 days I was at home working from my home office, they interrupted me all the time. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, I'm not going to get any work done. So I want to be there for my sons, and they like to wrestle and they like to show dad the pictures they're painting and all the things that they're doing, whatever. And after 2 days of this, they come running in. I said, boys, dad needs to explain something to you. And again, they're like, I don't know, 3 and 5 years old, 3 and 4. They're like, okay. And I said, you guys probably don't know this, but based on university studies, every interruption costs 20 minutes of lost productivity. So they're 3 and 4. I mean, they're not going to understand it, but I still say it. And they're looking at me like deer in the headlights. I said, what does that mean to you? Well, dad's able to take lunch now. And so, I do 20 minutes and I wrestle with you. Yeah, we like that, Dad. Okay. And then I have lunch for 20 minutes and then I wrestle again with you. Because they're little boys, they want to wrestle. They can't get enough of it, just like clients. And so I said, you interrupt me once and we don't wrestle. You interrupt me twice, dad doesn't get lunch. You interrupt me 3 times, and then dad's not going to be able, wrestle, lunch, and wrestle again. It dried it up just like that. So a lot of times we give too much credit for adults. We think, well, they're considerate of the people. They're not. They're selfish. It's just how human nature is. So we've got to put it in a manner. And if you want scripting, talk to your EVAs or your Action Vision coaches, and we might come up with, like a office workbook that says, okay, this is how we as a company. If you have, like, if mom's one way and dad's another way, that's harder on the kids. If you don't have the entire company on board, it makes it hard. If they can call Paul anytime and they can't call Jemima. And so if we get it to where we're all in alignment, that's going to be better. So train all clients in best time to call. And have scripting and process for the entire company. Now, our temptation is, don't be lazy. So don't be lazy. What that means is don't say, well, it's not working. What do you mean it's not working? It's not working at all? Well, it's not working 100% of the time. That's just lazy. Of course, it's not going to work 100% of the time. Like nothing works 100% of the time, probably. What you're looking for is incremental. And it's a training. It's like you got to tell people, you have to tell people what you told them. You have to train them. You have to tell them what they train. Then you've got to enforce it. So if children have bad habits, like they jump on the couch, let's say, so they're not supposed to, you let them jump on the couch for 2-3 years, and then you tell them not to jump on the couch. They're going to do that. With your customers, if they're used to controlling you rather than you controlling the experience, they're not going to have as good as experience if you control it, because you're the business owner, you're the parents, you're the adults in the room. Anybody else have anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So continue. Remember, this is not a destination. This is a journey. This is something we need to implement. We need to be intentional. We need to be disciplined in what we do. We need to have the whole company. It needs to be the culture. This is how we do it. We're doing everything not for John's comfort, not for your comfort. It's not for John's benefit. It's not for your benefit. It's for the customer. In the end, this is what's best for the customer. It's just like a home. We're doing this for the customer. Often our children don't see why we're doing this for benefit of them. They don't see the benefit of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't benefit. The customer may not see the benefit, but that's really what we're doing it for. So if you have any questions on this, connect with your Action Vision executive coach, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300 outside the US 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.